love this episode. It is with my friend and fellow Hay House author, Kyle Gray. He has written 8 international best-selling books. He has a plethora of oracle decks, which are some of my favorite decks to work with. And I think what I love about this conversation is it's just an embodiment of who he is. So he's able to take these big esoteric subjects and ground them in his humanness. And I just think that it's super helpful. It's a really juicy conversation. We talk everything from his sexuality to paralysis and death and what God is and what angels are and his recommendations for starting a spiritual practice if you are at the beginning of your journey on that front. It's a great conversation and I hope that you love it. So without any further ado, let's get on with the episode. Hello, you gorgeous human being. It is Susie Ashworth here, and you are listening to the Infinite Receiving Podcast. I am so fucking excited right now. We are going to have the episode of a lifetime. I have got my friend in the house, friend, spiritual mentor, Hay House author extraordinaire, international best-selling oracle deck seller. I mean, the accolades go on and on and on and on. And he's a man. We've got a man in the chicken house. I want to
boys
say.
in the hood. Yeah, here we go.
We've got a boy in the hood, my friends. His name is Kyle Mother Trucking Gray. Welcome to the podcast, Kyle.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm really excited. We were just having a little chat about life and business and, you know, all of the things. And I think that one of the things that I adore about you is with all of the success that you have created in your life, which is just really very inspiring. There is a realness, a truthfulness, a level of authenticity. Like there's just no bullshit that I feel with you. I don't feel any barriers with you, and it enables me to have my barriers down. So thank you for showing up the way that you do.
Oh, thank you. I feel like it's a mutual feeling. Like we don't sweat the small stuff, do we? Just as soon as we see each other, it's just like straight to the what's going on, like right into it. I like that. I think that it's important. You can do that with friends.
Yeah. I can't remember the first time that we met, but
I do.
Oh, okay. Tell me.
we met at pharmacy. Do you remember? It was pharmacy. You were just doing the birth method book, and we had like a mini mastermind in pharmacy, and you were there.
Oh my goodness! Actually, Carrie Green, I think.
And you were 2 people away from me. I remember where you were seated. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Is that a superpower of yours? Are you just very tuned in? Like, do you remember people generally?
Yeah, usually I'll remember where I met someone and the circumstances around it usually, which is quite nice.
Is that important to you? Is that like an intentional skill that you've developed?
I have always had a scary memory, just like remembering some of the finest details of the weirdest situations. Like I remember as far back as 1.5 years old, and my parents were selling their sofa. Wow. And I remember like who came into the house and who bought it. And I remember like the whole conversation around them selling this sofa.
Oh, that is
really weird.
Interesting.
Isn't it?
And I think that anybody really remembered stuff before the age of like 4 at the youngest.
I was wondering that as well. And then I like confirmed it with my mother. I also remember like pooing in the bath as a little boy, and I must have been like maybe like, like a year old. I remember doing it because my dad was in the bath with me, and then a poo floated past, I'll never forget it.
The drama. He's booed in the bath. He's booed in the grab the sieve.
It was one of those, do you remember those baths that were kind of green as well? Like the green bath from the 80s?
Yeah, 100%. Let's go back to the beginning, baby.
Sure.
When did you first realize that there was something bigger than yourself in this universe?
Do you know what? That's a really great question. I feel like I was born knowing God existed. It's just never been a question for me. I've just always believed in a higher power. I think there's a little bit to that where I was born into a pretty superstitious religious family. So there was always a bit of, my grandmother was severely superstitious, but she was also a believer in God and all those things. And my mum's sister married a pastor when she was in her 20s. So I always grew up with like an olive branch to the kind of Baptist style church life. So yeah, I think I've always really believed in a higher power. And I think that's been installed through a number of different spaces, like when my grandmother was really unwell, I was paralyzed at the same time as my grandmother being in a wheelchair. So we were both in wheelchairs in the same household at the same time. And so there was like a really amazing bond that was built there. And a lot of her ideals, I think, were just inherited by me in a lot of the way. As I'll still say things that my grandmother would say. And when she got really unwell and I had made a recovery, a neighbor called Margaret used to look after me, and she was a devout Catholic. My family were Protestant, and in Scotland it's quite divided still. I don't know if you know that. Like there's still a bit of you're either one or the other. Yeah. And my grandmother kind of danced with both. And I would go with this neighbor to chapel. And I remember, being as early, maybe 3.5, 4 years old, going to chapel with Margaret, the neighbor, and lighting candles for my grandmother. So there's just memories upon memories of just like believing and praying to a higher power. And it's never left me.
How come you were paralyzed? What was going on there?
Yeah, so that's how I developed a lot of the neurodiverse skills, I'll call them, like because I had a virus called Guillain-Barré syndrome. It starts with the flu. Often people think it's like meningitis, but it's Guillain-Barré. And basically what happens is your nervous system shuts down to protect itself, and so it often leaves paralysis. It's usually from the waist down. So that's what happened to me from this flu bug. A lot of people actually got it after COVID. There's a similar viral thing happening there. And so we actually saw a surge of more people speaking about the thing that was kind of rare when I was a little boy, which was interesting. And yeah, so that was basically it. And then over maybe a 6 to 8 month period, I had to learn to walk again. My body just naturally healed itself. It didn't do anything to overcome it. It didn't have any medicines or anything. It's just one of those ride it out till it's gone.
So
viruses.
How old were you when that happened?
I must have been about 3.5 years, 3, nearly 4. And I was able to learn to walk again for 4.5 to start school. But the space between me recovering and starting school was very small.
Right.
And my parents always agree that they pushed me in too early, but it was definitely a childcare situation.
Yeah. They need to
need to work. And yeah. So there was a really traumatic time happening around there because I was paralyzed. My parents were at loggerheads with each other. My grandmother had lymphoma cancer. She's in a wheelchair. My mother's trying to care for us both. I developed this skill of being able to go beyond my body. So I could smell what was being cooked. Now I know exactly what was being made. I could smell someone if they came in the front door. I could hear conversations through doors. There was just like a heightened awareness. And it's because I couldn't run around like a little kid would. I was just like stuck. So I developed this ability to expand myself essentially. And I think that's what opened me up to being attuned or psychic, because it was when my grandmother passed away. Margaret was looking after me, the neighbor, and I wake up through the night and my grandmother's at the bottom of my bed, and my initial instinct was, oh, she's come home, because her bedroom was next to mine, so she'd popped into, she tickled my back. And I remember just feeling so loved. And then when I went to look for her the next morning, she was not there. And it was revealed to me later that day that my grandmother had gone to heaven, which was actually the words that my parents used. So from that first experience, I just have had this big question, and I don't know all the answers, but I've always just had the question in my head, what happens to us when we die? That's really, because as a Sunday school kid, because I went to Sunday school until I was 16 years old. I was a Sunday school leader. The question that I had was, if my grandmother passed away, why was I able to see her? Yeah. So that was really, that's how it all started.
You just said so much there. I just want to tap back into the extrasensory awareness piece. I don't know if you know Blue of Earth. She has a...
Oh, yes. She's so cool. She's like deaf, but she has extrasensory perception.
Yeah. And what I've heard her say is that actually it's really normal to describe what you've just described. When you have one deficiency in one sense of the word of a sense, then your other senses become heightened to make up for what you might be lacking in one area. And it sounds like for you, actually, it wasn't just one sense that was heightened. It was all of the other senses.
And I was just going to say, and it's problematic.
Why is it problematic?
Sometimes it gets me in trouble because I can notice things that other people can't, and then people think, some people push against it, saying that I'm wrong, but I'm often very right with those perceptions. So it's really annoying. Yeah. But I also I can almost see if someone's smelly, if that makes sense.
Ooh.
It's so annoying.
Yeah, that's...
And see if someone has body odor, I experience it tenfold. I'm just such an attuned nose. I'm like...
Can you smell me
This is so annoying.
How do I smell?
No. You're definitely sweet. But yeah, I can I remember one day I was just walking through Boots the pharmacy, and I saw this guy in the distance, and I was like, oh, I could smell how bad his body odor was before he even got to me. It was really bizarre. I'm like, that's so annoying.
Done plant medicine?
No, I don't need to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I asked that because when I have done ayahuasca, one of the things that I have noticed is that
I can smell that in people as well.
You can smell if they've done plant medicine?
Yeah, usually it usually bothers me quite a lot. I'm quite opposed to it, actually. I'm quite I don't like the feeling of ayahuasca's entity when it's in people and it comes close to me. I feel like kryptonite.
Really? Is there...
Yeah, I probably couldn't be intimate with someone who's done ayahuasca, for example.
Now, see, I can understand why this is problematic. And, I say that with a smile on my face, but I also think that the type of circles that we mix in,
there's loads of it.
Feels like a high percentage of people they're looking for the attunement. So for people that don't feel like they have that extrasensory awareness, we are, myself included, looking to use tools to help support us on that journey and with that connection. Is that why?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, because I do think it can be an incredibly powerful medicine. And, especially if people have got really overwhelming shadow stuff, or just can't unlock. It's funny, mushroom doesn't make me feel weird. That feels friendly. I feel like I'm in fairy territory when I touch that. Like when I feel it, it feels like really gentle. I'm like, oh yeah. Like if I was ever going to do a plant medicine, I would double drop mushrooms, like no question about it. I would just be like, yeah, that's the one. I've never done any party drugs. I DJ'd for years. I never tried anything. I can't even drink alcohol now. It's really interesting.
So first off, it's really interesting the way that you describe the energy of mushrooms, because now this is a medicine that really in the last, well, it's this year that I have worked with intentionally. And for me, I'm like, the energy of mushroom is the mischief of the mushrooms. So when you talk about that fairyland, like for me, that's a real match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, I'm like, I'm not even sure if I'm talking about like a winged little person sitting on top of a mushroom. I'm thinking like, it just feels like that, you know? Yeah. It feels, I call them devas. It's just like the energy of the plants. But yeah, when I feel ayahuasca, it gives me slytherin. That's what it gives me.
That's really interesting.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I don't think I would come back if I tried ayahuasca.
Do you feel like part of the reason no party drugs, no plant medicine is because your channel is so clear that you just know that if you touched anything like that, it's not going to have a positive impact, or it's just not required?
Well, I actually think it was because I was exposed to a lot of Hay House books back in the day. And around that time, one of the biggest authors in the world was Doreen Virtue and Diana Cooper. They were both like the two kind of main people in Angels, which was like my love. And they both wrote about how using any sort of drug actually took you further away from God, took you further away from angels. So whether that is true or not, is open for speculation these days, because I think there's somewhat a old Christian kind of idea to that too. But it actually served me, I think, in the long run. I was like, oh, that's actually kept me morally aligned throughout my life, and I'm so proud not to have got sucked into that, because it was very much around me. But I don't want to confuse plant medicine and party drugs. That's like, you know, two different things for me. And I genuinely think that mushrooms particularly are definitely going to be the medicine that reduces stress, anxiety, depression. I think it's going to save the world if big pharma stays out of the equation. I think that's going to be an incredible thing. I genuinely believe it.
I was watching How to Change Your Mind on Netflix with Michael Pollan, and he was saying that he is not sure that Big Pharma could ever get involved in mushrooms because they are mushrooms, because they are free, because they grow everywhere.
They are wild. And I think that's part of their medicine.
Yeah. Cannot be contained.
Yeah, that's the only thing I'd be like, ooh, that feels, you know, intriguing. But I don't think I would do it unless I felt called. That's the key to all of this is, I think if you can hear Aya and she's like, hey, I need you to come and work with me, then I think you're going to have a completely different experience to the person who's in Thailand. They're like, oh my God, let's do Aya this weekend. You know, it's just like, there's two different things happening there.
100%. And my first experience with Aya was exactly that. Like, I had been kind of in my mind thinking about it for a year. And then the day that I was like, oh, actually, I think it's time. There was an ayahuasca ceremony in Mexico at the retreat center that was like 150 meters down the road. And I got served like an ad for it, like just not an ad, but like it came up on one of the feeds. And I was like, okay, so now it's time. So I did that. And
I remember you just came back and you had that little furry poncho.
I love that poncho.
Yeah, so cool. I remember being like, what is this? Because I think you said it was like a medicine poncho or something. Like there was definitely
there. So I got that when I was in Peru 2 years ago. And
or is it a llama? Is it made from llama like fluff or something?
I want to say it's not Oaxaca. What is it? The other animal that's like a llama, like a yak.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And that.
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's lovely.
It's cute. You'll see me on Instagram sporting it again this year.
You can tell like it's like an ethically made item when you see it, you know.
Yeah. I think the company's called Moon. I don't know. I'll link it in the
For anyone who would like to be, you know, in the vibe.
I'm curious. So 16, you were you were a church leader. You were Sunday church leader.
Sunday school leader, yeah.
Yeah.
I was already kind of between the worlds at that point. It was always there, and it's one of the reasons why I think I'm really good at singing, by the way. It's just like I've always liked church. It's just a church thing, isn't it? I had been already kind of between the worlds. I had been interested in crystals and all these things from like maybe 13, 14 years old because I'd been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Uh-huh. It came on TV and there was like a character in Buffy and called Willow, and I just like instantly was like, oh, resonate. And I was kind of interested in her earth magic and, you know, all the cool things that she was doing. But I kind of had to keep that quiet from like my cousins and everyone who was involved in church because they were like, oh, that's the devil's work, you know. Yeah. And then there came a point when one of my cousins had actually said to me, Kyle, you need to choose between God or Buffy.
Ooh.
And I chose Buffy, obviously.
Did you say that? Was it a he or she?
It's a she, yeah.
Did
she
you say that to her face?
No, I don't think I did. So then I started retreating a little bit, and then I wouldn't be going every week. I'd be going once a month, and then eventually it just kind of fell away. But I did quickly replace my church life with spiritualist churches. It was like I ended with this, and I then straight away went to that. And there was quite a lot of crossover in spiritualism. Yeah. You know, like the prayer, the song, like a hymn, you know, and but then instead of a pastor doing a sermon, it was a medium channeling the dead. So yeah, it was always there. But that did kind of throw me into this kind of place of trying to figure out authentic spirituality, because it made me at odds with God for quite a while. So I never questioned if God was real. I just wasn't sure if I liked him or them or not. You know, like that was really a big question. And I think the main point was also I was struggling with my sexual identity and just like trying to figure out, you know, do I like boys or girls or both, or, you know, like who knows? And, you know, like everyone saying, you know, like if you're gay, you're going to hell and all these things. So it's like a really scary. So I was at odds with God for quite a while. And my earlier spiritual path did not include God, you know, and it wasn't until a family friend had said to me, hey, I know you're interested in crystals and energy healing. What about angels? Have you ever thought about angels? And I was like, oh, I'm not really interested in anything that's Christian. And she was like, oh, no, angels are more than that. They're for everyone. You know, they're in every major religion of the world. And she said, why don't you come upstairs and I'll let you pick an angel card. And that was my first experience of like, oh, see, when I look back, Susie, it was such an amazing experience. And I think I often say to people when I'm teaching them angel cards, I'm like, don't take this for granted. The magic of this is really, really powerful. Like bringing out the velvet pouch and the velvet cloth to spread the cards on top of it. And there's just something really, it's quite beautiful. It is my day-to-day life now, but it's quite a beautiful experience. And so when I look back at that first encounter, I was mesmerized instantly that this little card could give me a message from my guardian angel. That was just like...
There's so many things I want to ask you. When did you bring God back in then?
God didn't come back in until... I actually think I had to make the effort when I wrote my second book, Angel Prayers, because when I first brought out my first book, it was all about me doing angel readings for people, and there was not really any God in the conversation at all. And then when I started to kind of get more known for being the angel whisperer, as I was called at the beginning, I realized that I actually attracted a very Christian audience towards me. There was a lot of very Christianish people or recovering Christians. I actually have quite a lot of Muslim people in my crowd as well. So there was a lot of God connected conversations coming up. And I was like, I'm going to have to figure this God thing out. That was really around that time. I was like, okay, I actually wrote a section about it in Raise Your Vibration called Getting Good with God.
Where did you find your peace?
It was actually through this book called A Course in Miracles. I had gotten it when I was maybe 15 or 16 years old, and it sat on my bookshelf. It's downstairs. It sat on my bookshelf for years upon years. It was like one of those big, heavy yoga block-sized books. And anytime I read it, I was like, this is gobbledygook.
Yeah.
And then I, for some reason, learned that the back of the book there was lessons. I don't know if you know A Course in Miracles or not. Yeah. So there's lessons, and instead of just reading the book, I just started doing the lessons. There's 365 lessons, and I thought I'll just do one a day for the next year and see what happens. So I think I've done that I think I did 8 years of A Course in Miracles, daily lessons. And then 1 year, I just did one lesson for the entire year.
What was the lesson?
The lesson is the thing that healed my relationship with God. It was the lessons. I can't remember what number it is. But the lesson is, into His presence would I enter now. So the lesson is that I'll tell you the kind of a synopsis of what the lesson is. The lesson is, you already are existing in God's heart and mind. And so the daily practice for that day is to invite God in to where God already abides, which is a really kind of... So basically you're saying, into His presence would I enter now. So it's basically a surrender lesson where you're just falling into the arms of God. That's the whole entire practice. And I will never forget it. I was in my office one day in Glasgow when I had one, and I was doing the lesson, and I was just into His presence would I enter now, just as a mantra. And I just into His presence I entered, and I just remember dropping on my knees, and I just burst into tears, and I was just on the floor in my office, just crying my eyes out, because I actually felt like, instead of trying to understand God, I felt God, and there was a difference.
Do you remember at what stage in your year that you had that experience?
I remember the time of year. It was spring, so it must have been 4 months into this lesson.
Okay.
Yeah, because you started in the January.
And then you continued with it.
Yeah, and I remember calling Holly Holden that day. I'm like, Holly! I'm in his presence. And she was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm like, into his presence. I'll never forget the words she said to me. She went, I know. How are we going to cope? Marianne Williamson actually wrote an amazing prayer based on the same concept. She says, Dear God, please enter where you already abide. I'm like, fucking hell, like that makes my arms. So like, yeah, that is the thing. And so when I experience God, I don't experience like a man, a white man with a stick and a white beard. It's like it's just like an all-encompassing everything that is and ever will be. It's the same thing that scientists call the quantum field for me. It's just like the intangible and the incomprehensible, like we just can't understand what it is. But I think we're already in it and it's already in us. But in our lives, we have opportunities to rest in it. And that's what I made my practice. And that I've never not been in a good place with God since then. God. That's a Sister Act. That's a Sister Act reference.
I don't know that. I love Sister Act.
It goes like, joyful, joyful Lord, we adore thee. And in my life I put none before thee. Together was a youngster, I came to know that you were the only way to go. And then they go, can I have a G-O-D? G-O-D?
G-O-D. You will me. G-O-D. Yeah.
That's it. There you go. Everybody. Yeah.
Where does love come in to that reference? Is that also just part of all that is?
Yes, I think it is essentially a love vibration. And I think often when you say love, the instant thing is we always go to like our experience of love, for like a relationship love, a mother and a child love, like, but it's just a love that is. And it's not something we can really comprehend. I think the only way to know it is when you arrive there, and then it's like an emotional experience that you just can't fathom.
Going back to plant medicine, actually, when I did Booth, I had...
You've done them all, Suze.
I haven't actually done that, but they have been quite profound experiences. And I remember...
What is Buffo? Is that the frog?
Yeah, toad.
Toad, right.
And
fabulous.
I had this horrific start of my journey. I asked to face my fears, which is probably not the best intention to go into.
I've got a funny story about that.
An extreme ceremony. But I did, and I had two lucid moments. The first moment I thought, is this madness? Like, am I ever going to regain my mind again? It was so much struggle, so much pain. And then the second lucid moment was let go. And when I let go, that's when the bliss came in. I went all the way back to the beginning of time. I was witness to Adam and Eve, and I felt a love through me, all around me, that I have never felt in my life before or since. And shortly after that, my ceremony ended, and it was like, in the beginning and at the end, there is only love, and everything in between is illusion. Like, that was
That's A Course in Miracles 101.
Yeah. I want to hear your story, but I also just want to speak to the fact that it's interesting to me. I wonder if this is part of your neurodiversity, the fact that you could take that lesson. You had your breakthrough moment in the spring, but you continued with it daily for 365 days. I'm in Raise Your Vibration. Thank you very much. And, you're there like, I've been doing this Kriya for like the last 1,450 days. Like, is that part of your neurodiversity, that level of discipline and willingness
Yeah,
to do it again and again and again and again?
I think so. Because I didn't really, I don't really, I've not been diagnosed with any neurodiverse, stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I do things, people are like, how very neurodiverse of you? How very I'm like, yeah, I guess I am kind of neurodiverse. I'm like intensely obsessive about things
Sure.
and doing things a certain way. Rebecca says to me, you're just an all-in kind of guy. Like if you do it, you're all in. Like when I quit alcohol, I was all in. When I learned that I was, celiac, I just was like, no gluten, and I will be so tight about it.
Yeah.
So I guess it is. So I have found that when you really want to have a raised vibration, if you really want to do it, if you really want to walk the path, then you have to commit to it. And that's what I get cross at a lot, is like how people really want to live a spiritual life, but they're not willing to do the stuff that needs to be done to do it. So I teach people to make their practice unshakable so that they are unshakable. Like that's basically it. So when the stuff hits the stuff, when the fan hits when the stuff hits the fan,
shit.
yeah, when the shit hits the fan, what I'm trying to say to people is like, most people only pray when things go wrong. But if you can make your practice about praying when things are going right, when the moments go wrong, the universe is going to hear you better.
Do you know what's so interesting that you say that? Because what I notice for me is that I'm great when things are going good. That's when my practice will be the best. But when I experience a contraction, it's like the practice can go out.
I double down.
Yeah.
I double down.
Happen. I do not like that. I had that awareness today. I was like, you get to be in this when it's good and when it is not good. And so I really love that. Specifically when it comes to praying, I get it. Like everything's bad, I'm going to pray to God. And I think that you see it certainly in business when you create that flywheel, and when things are going great, it's like, I'm great. Yeah, of course I'm doing this. Of course I'm doing that. But then when things start to get a little bit shitty, it's like, oh, I'll just have the ice cream and I'll sit and watch Netflix for 10 hours instead of, I did the aura cleansing this morning, cleansed my aura from your membership. And then I was like, right, I am going to go back to my day one of my intuition booster. And it felt really good to stop the thing that I was doing that was not in alignment with my spiritual growth and be like, okay, what do I want right now? What do I need? And to do that practice of just cleansing my aura 5 minutes, God, it felt fucking amazing. And that was,
there you go.
It's like, okay, now do your next practice. And so back on it.
Do you know what the coolest thing about all of this is? What I'm trying to teach people here is the energy that you felt was created by you. Like that's the coolest thing. Like you might be doing the class with someone else, but you are the creator and the curator of your energy field. Yes. So, so when you do the practice, like, I feel so good. And why do you feel so good? Because you did it for you. Yeah. And like there's something in that. Yeah. I think that's why when Kundalini yoga came into my world and I learned this technology, when things go wrong, I've got even more things I do. I'm just like, oh, I'm going to double down. I'm going to go really hard on this. And I've noticed such a shift, but also my capacity to recover and snap back is almost instant. I've never really been in a funk person. I've always just kept on going anyway. I think it's part of being a 7 in the Enneagram. Yeah. You're definitely a 7. So when people say to me about depression, I actually can't really relate. And I always make that clear in my teaching. I'm like, I don't relate to that. So I feel for you and I want to have empathy, but I don't understand it.
I have said those words because my ex had a tendency to kind of be on the edge of that when it comes to his mental health and personality. And it was very difficult for me because that is just not my existence. And I am very much of like, right, okay, like this morning having a moment, and it was like, oh, okay, I'm aware I'm having a moment. Okay, what am I going to do now? And for me, when I go into the doing something that is going to serve me, that creates the shift. And then it's like, okay, let's go.
I'm back. Let's go.
Yeah. The idea of not doing something or doing something and then it not having the impact, it's just not my experience. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I find that quite funny because a lot of the people in our circle are very deep people, and like, you know, like, I'm really close with Rebecca Campbell and Megan Watterson, and they're both you know, fours in the Enneagram, which is like the artist, the individual, and they feel everything. And then when they're going through something, like really have these physical experiences, and I'm like, can you just like ask God not to make it so physical? And they're like, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't work? You know, so sometimes it's got me into trouble over the years. I'm like, so I always just like make that clear when I'm speaking to people. I was like, I've had anxiety in my life. I've had panic attacks, but I don't relate to depression. And it's not that I don't believe in it, because I do.
Yeah.
But I just can't relate. It just is not a lived experience for me.
Yeah. So important to speak to. And the fact that you are friends with Rebecca, and you know, it's like another incredible author, spiritual teacher, and everybody's experience is different. And I think that this, when you're picking a coach, when you're picking a teacher, when you're picking a mentor for anything, actually understanding their lens and where they're coming from and their experience is super important, because you need to be able to feel that they have walked a path. I think, at least for me, somebody has walked the path that I want to walk and also can relate to me. So I think that is important to speak to. I'm very excited. I mentioned to you we're going to have Megan on the podcast.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. The author of Mary Magdalene Revealed. And Kyle has a little cameo in that book.
I do.
I was
so funny.
Away, and there he was. And
I didn't know if you had gotten to that point, because you had said you were reading it, and then I was like, oh, I wonder if she's seen me yet.
Yeah. I knew straight away. What I loved is a little bit in reference to what I started the podcast with, but Megan described you as being 50% human, or maybe she said 100% human and 100% divinity, 50% human and 50% divinity. And that is really my experience of you. It made me laugh earlier on when you're like, and the reason I'm so good at singing, and I just thought, that is Kyle Gray. Like, I ask people to name their greatest attributes, and they're like, oh my goodness, I mean, I don't know what to say. And you're just like, yeah, baby, I'm so good at singing, by the way, because old church. That for me feels very human. And
I didn't even notice I did that. What a Leo rising was that? That is so funny.
I loved it. And then you have this spiritual connection. So I'm curious about your practice with cards actually now. What does that look like on a daily basis?
I don't really do it daily anymore, to be fair. I don't really need to do it, but I speak to angels daily, for sure. Yeah, so I have, but if I do, I do often bring cards to bed with me, and I like to do a practice at night. So I do like 22 minutes of Kundalini meditation. I do a gratitude journal every day. Again, that's another thing that I don't miss a day.
Yeah.
So I do like 6 to 7 lines of gratitude every single day. I have another journal which I just write like random prayers in.
Yeah.
And then 22 minutes of meditation. And then I do this thing called merging with the angels, which is in Raise Your Vibration. So you can look at it if you want. But I basically, once you've done a Kundalini practice and you've raised your vibration enough, you actually create the space for you to merge into the angelic. So it's just like resting in the mind of angels. That's basically the practice. So I say, I'm now resting into the mind of angels. I'm now resting into the mind of my angel. I'm now resting into the mind of archangels. I now rest in the angelic mind. And it's just this awareness that I'm connected to an intelligent force that has and can reveal to me everything that I need in the perfect time-space sequence. That's basically the practice.
I'm curious about, how does that feel in your body? Like, do you notice a change in your physical?
It's like a hum. Like a like that. You're just resting, and you'd realize you're not not on your own. You're part of something greater. It's an empowering place. If I never can get to an answer, I'll just go there and rest in it. I'm not asking the angels to like tell me the right thing to do, point me out to the answer. My practice has evolved to the point where I don't ask anymore. I just receive. And it's very in your brand here. Yeah, I don't ask. I just trust that all I need is given to me anyway. That's the whole practice that I have now.
Oh, there's so much I want to speak to you about this, because I feel that often outside of health, and maybe this applies to even health, people are wanting to go on a spiritual path because they are looking to get something. They are looking for protection. They're looking for wealth. And they believe that if my practice is good enough, if I am good enough, I should then be showered with everything that I want. And I'd love for you to speak to that.
I think I'm really interested in desire because I like things, like I love nice things. So there's no doubt, like I love to go, shopping, and I love cars and all the things. But what I realize is I don't need them.
Yes.
I don't need them. And also, I, for a long time, used to have a practice. It was like asking for this and asking for that. But I think it also might represent that I came in quite young to spirituality, and so like The Secret was just booming when I was writing, so there's like I was one of those people who was manifesting this and manifesting that and but there came a point where I matured emotionally, and so my practice went with it. And so I feel like it's gotten to a point now where I don't ask for any specific things, and if something is within my means, I'll enjoy it if it's within my means, but if it's not, I won't. And that's basically it. But I feel in this trust of like what I need will be given to me. And I just have that knowing, like all I need will be given to me and more. I always just say that, and more. And my prayer to that is just always say, dear God, thank you for showing me how I can live a life of service in a way that also serves me, my joy, my happiness, my relationships, and my bank account.
Yeah.
And I say it like that, unapologetically. And I've experienced that. I'm really grateful. My biggest goal in my life was just to buy my mum a home and have her have no mortgage. I'm quite happy to have one, but as long as she didn't have one, I feel like that was it. So by the time I was like 33, I'd hit all of my life goals financially. Everything else is a bonus from here.
You have such a beautiful relationship with your mum.
I do. Well, she was fighting with me today. We're very close. I'm close to both my parents. My parents got divorced, and then I've got a very friendly relationship with my father.
Okay.
It's like a bros kind of vibe. I know he is my dad, but my mother and I are a bit like a different kind of thing. I think it's just because, single parent household, just the two of us. So yes, very strong relationship. And it's a very fun-centered relationship. She loves to put the middle finger up at me a lot. And I'm quite a cheeky person, and she's always like doing that to me, and it's quite funny. But yeah, very good, very, very positive relationship, I would say.
She works in the business, but is she an angel evangelist too?
She definitely believes. And yeah, she definitely does all these things. I see her picking her cards every day. I see her. I posted on social media last week. I could hear my own voice singing, chanting in the background. And I'm like, have I left something playing? And then I go out, and her door. She was living with me at the time. Her bedroom door was kind of opened, and I looked through, and there she was, just like sitting like that, doing a Kundalini meditation to me on the screen. It was quite cute. That. I was like, it's such a moment. Isn't it cool? Like, obviously that is testament to how much we believe in what we do in my company, and the fact that my mother is also doing it. Yeah. And then when I met with my team the other week, and I thought this was really cool, they're all practicing. All of them practice what we teach in the company. Yeah. I'm like, that's surely got to be rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I think that's cool. Like, they're all doing the meditations.
It's very cool.
Yeah, I like that.
Does your dad get it?
No. No idea. No idea. He also still just turns up at my front door, like, just thinking that you can just, like, doesn't realize I'm actually, like, running a company, or, doesn't get it. Completely missed it.
How do you feel about
He's just he's a fireman, my dad. He's just like, I think it pissed me off for a while, but now I'm just like past it. I'm just like, he's just never going to get it.
Yeah.
He knows what I think he believes in what I do, but he's never really been involved in it. So it's not really in the periphery. It's not really, I just don't think he'll ever fully get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure I fully get it either, so who knows?
You said this at the beginning, you don't have all of the answers. What? Yeah,
I'm really into the inquiry of what I do. All my ideas have changed. Constantly changing.
What has been the latest new awareness for you?
Well, I've always been able to see angels, and then I stopped seeing them. Did I tell you about that?
No.
Do you know about that?
No.
The angels just stopped showing up. They used to like show up like actually physical beings that I was seeing. One day I just stopped seeing angels, and I was very aware that I wasn't seeing things the way I used to. And I remember like dropping in, and I was like, I can't see you. Are you there? And they're like, yes, we're here. Like this kind of voice. And I was like, why can't I see you anymore? And they went, because our image was an illusion. And I was just like, oh, fuck. What do you mean? And the angels were basically just saying, they kind of gave me this awareness that clairvoyance is actually, is like an ego-based need. And they said that basically a lot of people measure their level of awareness and spirituality on how clairvoyant they are.
Right.
And in order to be able to ascend, you have to be able to fully surrender it and let it go. And I was like, oh shit. So, so every now and then I still have a vision or like I see things, but it wasn't the way it was before. And that was it. They were like, you can't claim this because people use it to make themselves spiritually better than others.
Mm.
And so I was then like, so what's the most advanced spiritual gift? And they said the ability to feel. And then, so I then started teaching people. I was like, if you've never seen an angel, you've skipped an unnecessary step. That's what I teach people now.
That's so interesting because I'm not a very visual person. So clairvoyance is seeing and claircognizance, that's feeling, right?
Clairsentience is to feel. Cognizance is just to know.
To know. Okay.
Like a download.
Yeah. I think that I am claircognizant.
You just like know things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think cognizance and sentience is basically probably the same thing. But the angels told me that the one thing that will move with us when we leave the body is the sentience. Because when we go back to love, we will only be able to feel. And so we can't see with our eyes, we can't hear with our ears, we can't know with our brain, we just feel, we're just in the love. I was like, oh, okay then. So that's why it wasn't there anymore. And it also is really exciting to be able to tell that to people, because I see hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people at conferences who are just desperate to have an angel experience, and they're basing their worth on that experience. And the fact that they're not seeing an angel has made them feel not good enough spiritually.
Yeah.
And then then I feel like that's where my work serves a purpose. I'm like, you don't need it. You genuinely don't need it. Feeling is the most important thing.
I love this. So for everyone who's listening who wants to start a spiritual practice, what would you give me 3 top tips or 4 things that they can start doing right now? What would those things be?
First thing I'd say to you was, I hope you don't mind the plug, but on my YouTube, I created 4 days called the High Vibe Reset. It's there all year round, and it's 4 days in a row that introduces you to 4 different ways of practicing, and then one of those days will speak to the most. So that's one thing I would say. But if you really wanted to start a spiritual practice, I always say meditation is the key. And people are like, oh, I can't fucking meditate. I can't switch off my mind. Meditation is not switching your mind off. It's actually switching it on. You have to switch on your mind. It's mindfulness, not mind emptiness. There's a reason for that. Yeah. So I always say to people, learn how to sit first. Don't even worry about going to the beach or going in the castle or visiting the fairylands or whatever. Just set a timer for 5 minutes and vow not to move or open your eyes until the timer goes off.
I love that, by the way. I am today I practiced, I had my 9 minutes and then say 5 minutes beforehand, but that's the longest I've sat cross-legged with just
even that's really hard for people.
Just one pillow under my butt. I've gone from 2 pillows and props under both of my knees to 1 pillow in probably 10 days.
Oh, hips. Do you have hip issues? Tight hips?
Yeah, tight hips. So that feels good to see the progress, which I know is not the spiritual thing.
No, that's really it. Learning how to just sit. I always say to people, see if you don't find it weird sitting on the floor, sit on your bed. Make it comfy. Put 1 pillow underneath your butt and 1 pillow behind you, and make a little chair on the bed, and it'll soften everything up.
Yeah.
But you don't even have to sit cross-legged for it to be spiritual. You can just sit upright in a chair for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
Or my mum does it on a reclining chair, at home.
She's
like that, doing hers. Yeah. Yeah, as long as you're doing it, that's the most important thing. Just learn how to sit first of all. And then the other thing is, if you want angels to be part of your life, the best way to welcome them is just to thank them. I always just say to people, say thank you, angels. Every time something goes well in your life, go, thank you, angels. Thank you, angels. Just something good happens, say thank you, angels. And I'm not telling you to praise angels. What I'm actually telling you to do is just say thank you, because when we say thank you, angels, they're not excited because we're giving them praise. They're excited because the gratitude we genuinely feel makes us magnetic to miracles. And that's why I always just say, just get into the thank you habit. Yeah. If I was to say the few things I would say is just make gratitude your practice. If meditation is sitting for 5 minutes, and make gratitude your practice, write a few lines a day about what you're grateful for, and make it fun. I write the coolest thing. If I read you my gratitude journal, I've got a cupboard of them full over there.
Yeah.
If I read them back to you, you'd be laughing. Like, the things I write, it's crazy. Like, on Sunday, I wrote a cheeky Mackie D's on the way home.
I am so surprised that you had a cheeky Mackie D's. What did you have?
Oh, yeah. I'm not too spiritual for McDonald's. Hell no.
Very healthy.
I am. Yeah, I am very healthy. I had a triple cheeseburger, no bun.
Oh, well, that is not a Mackie D's, is it? It's a no bloody bun. Relax. So you had meat with cheese.
I eat it with a fork because there's no bun, obviously. It's so funny.
Not a McDonald's. Can you please, I am going to let you go in a minute, but can you just explain what an angel is in your world?
Yeah, an angel is just angels are the heartbeats of the divine. So basically, if the divine was to be a heart, every time the heart was to beat, the beat would be an angel. Or if we were to say that God is a brain, every time the brain was to think, the thought would be an angel. So an angel is an extension of the divine appearing to us as individuals so that we can have an individuated experience of love. It's just God in drag. That's basically it. Angels are God in drag. It's God separating itself so that we can feel it personally. That's it. But in the trueness of it all, it's all just one.
I want to close out with 6 quick fire questions that I ask all of my beautiful guests. The first of those questions is, what does infinite receiving mean to you?
Knowing all I need is given to me anyway.
Are you good at that?
Yeah.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
I'm it, babe.
No, I genuinely, I think I am. Yeah.
Yeah. Who in your life right now could you allow to love you a little bit more, or where in your life could you allow a little bit more love in?
It's a great question. I feel very loved, to be fair. I feel like me probably could be a little bit more loved in business. Yeah. I think I do a lot more than most. Yeah.
Okay. What is your greatest attribute?
Reading between the lines.
Yeah.
Seeing what cannot be seen. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where in your life could you allow in a little bit more support, or who could you allow to support you just a little bit more?
Oh, I think it's kind of similar. I'm kind of working on that business thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just kind of like, I just had a moment with my mother before this podcast. I'm like, I need you to just give me a little bit more back here so that I can be on this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like to have to chase a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mum, are you listening? She will listen to this.
Probably.
Oh, final question. And actually, I feel like you might have already answered this. I might know what the answer is going to be.
Is it Hermes or Prada? No.
Cartier, darling. What is one thing that you are consciously manifesting right now?
Me, consciously manifesting. I'm currently working on restructuring my company and the way I train people at the moment. And so I'm consciously in the kind of the weeds of it all. Okay. So I'm consciously creating a clear plan to help people expand. That's really what I'm trying to do.
Beautiful. That is not the answer I was expecting. So thank you. Kyle, loved today.
and a Birkin. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Can you please tell everybody, aside from High Vibe Reset, which I can find on YouTube, where else can
Yeah.
they find your magic?
Yeah, I guess I'm on Instagram, Kyle Gray UK. I barely post anymore, so I need to work on that.
Yeah.
And I also send out an email every Monday called Angel Message Monday, and I love doing that. I've done it for almost 10 years now, so I send out an angel message every Monday, so you can get that on my website as well.
Perfect. I love you.
Love you. Thank you for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And if you have enjoyed this episode as much as I have, could you do me a favor and share this with somebody that you love, somebody that you know would benefit from Kyle's Scottish wisdom, golden nuggets? I would love you forever. Please tag us on Instagram. Even if Kyle is not there, I will see and I will appreciate, and we will help get his message out into the world even further. And in the meantime, please remember that faith plus action equals miracles.
Miracles.